there's up on screen right now, Corey, is a tweet. Is this up? This is an incredible image from a Tesla factory today. It quite literally looks like a garbage fire. Is this up on screen, guys? And we've confirmed so far, I believe, that nobody was hurt.
As far as I've seen.
As far as we know. So we can laugh with
it
relative...
It is a garbage fire.
It is literally a garbage fire at Tesla. So we can laugh with some ease because nobody was harmed. Although I have to say, like, the air is bad enough in LA, and that looks real bad. So, and as Matt pointed out in his tweet, the Saudis look like they have already... looks like the Saudis have already read through Tesla's insurance policies.
Yeah, there was obviously a lot of speculation about whether Musk was seen anywhere in the vicinity with like a can of gasoline and a book of matches, but
crying
because they've been having problems meeting their production targets.
Well, they did take away the safety signs.
But it is not the first fire in recent times at the Tesla factory. At that particular one, they've had quite a few apparently.
Well, maybe do a little bit, like, because look, I make no bones about the fact that I enjoyed dunking on Elon Musk. Although I have to say, after reading that New York Times interview, I'm getting a little bit like, I don't want some random YouTube video to be like, what finally pushes the guy over the edge, right? I might be mean at times, but I'm not evil.
You thought he was genuinely. What was your take on that?
On the New York Times interview?
Yeah, and I guess people should probably know if they didn't see it.
Yeah, talk about that for a second.
He was a little weepy.
He was a little weepy.
And I guess the gist of it was, woe is me. I'm tired. I don't sleep anymore. My life is really difficult. And
well, I'll give you. Here's what I think.
Get off my back.
Here's what I think about that interview. Yeah, you're right. Woe is me. Get off my back. Blah blah blah. But here's what I think. I think partially, obviously, he's a disingenuous bastard, and he's playing for sympathy. No question. On the other hand, I think that if you're a publicly traded company who is not meeting its production targets, who is not fulfilling its goals, there's problems with the stock price, you're looking to get a private equity buyout from the Gulf, your volatile and weird behavior on social media has become like an actual business, like a shareholder problem. And if you're so out of it that you think, what's going to bring this all back, home for us is crying to the New York Times, I'm going to say that in and of itself is a form of like, this guy's under a lot of pressure and not thinking clearly. You see what I mean?
Well, and also nobody tells him no.
And nobody tells him no.
I mean, that's a theme with these oligarchs, right? Nobody can tell him no, and that's something that you hear in all kinds of employee accounts, ex-employee accounts of working at his companies.
Can I make an analogy?
Yeah, go for it.
You know how they say that patriarchy hurts men too, and feminism is concerned with all human beings, not just women.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it.
Capitalism hurts capitalists, Anti-capitalism is for the capitalists, for the ruling class, as well as the workers.
Well, it creates an industrialist mythology that can never be actually, embodied.
Right.
So we can all agree that Elon Musk would be happier if he would just take some time off, play some video games,
I mean, honestly,
level up his old D&D characters.
And once we expropriate his company, he can totally still work there, inventing things and doing what he's good at.
No, I actually want real quality control on publicly funded and cooperatively owned R&D, and I don't think he's going to cut it.
I mean, we will put back the safety signs. That is important.
So, some of all the focus has been on Tesla, but I mean, this guy has taken over a large chunk of the space program as well, and I think that's quite troublesome. Especially considering how we're seeing how he runs his companies.
Right.
It's like pretty slapdash operation, and people, lives are at stake with these things. And
Well-
I hope that all the states that decided to allow, autonomous pilot programs for cars on a highway like Tesla's autopilot stuff, take a look at his sort of lack of togetherness now and maybe reconsider whether that was the smartest thing to do.
Well, that brings me to the part of, I mean, I'll justify my dunking on Elon Musk in a second, but the point I was trying to set up was there is actually something like there's a lot of problems at Tesla that are specific to, labor abuses there, and also, of course, exemplify the entire very exploitive and pernicious nature of Silicon Valley and tech. And that's why he matters. And I'm just wondering if maybe you can give us a little bit of a fresh primer on, like, Elon Musk isn't just the guy that accuses people of being a pedo on Twitter because they won't use his submarine, funny as that is. He's also somebody with a long-term, bad record in terms of labor.
Well, right. I mean, one of the nicknames employees had for his company SpaceX was SlaveX,
Right.
Because he drove them into the ground so consistently, and the same is true of Tesla. I mean, part of the thing in that Times interview, he was basically humble bragging about the hours he put in and sleeping at the office, and everybody else is basically expected to maintain that kind of schedule as well. So, as you can expect, a lot of high turnover and burnout at a company like that, viciously non-union.
Right.
And, there's a reason why in manufacturing processes where safety is a concern, like you're going to have a multi-ton vehicle sort of hurtling down the highway, at 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, you need people who are like rested, alert, following all kinds of safety protocols. And by all accounts, that was a secondary concern at Tesla. He is a notorious slave driver. And, how much of that has to do with the Silicon Valley culture in general of move fast and break things? I mean, it's entirely in keeping with the ethos of the place. But there's a difference when you're making like, Candy Crush.
Right.
When
Right.
when you're cramming to ship the next update to Candy Crush, and when you're building cars that are going to be out on the highways and city streets. So, I think it's reflective too of the sort of anti-worker ethos that Silicon Valley has inculcated in the culture over the last 20 years or so. And, I hope that now finally people are starting to see why it's not a viable way of running our society. You can't just cut labor costs to make up for the other sort of drawbacks in your company's profit model.
Yeah, and of course. And do you think that there is some puncturing of? Well, actually, no. First, I want to get to. There was a sort of quasi, not exactly a defense of Elon Musk, but had a caller on the post game on TMBS on Tuesday, and he said, the sort of two defenses that he put forward were one, And this guy has really good politics, so he's sort of like it's an indictment of our broader system, right? Like it's a catastrophe that we don't have essentially a massive social public R&D and investment in rapidly deploying, green technologies and updating NASA. Like the fact that isn't socialized and there isn't public imagination around the possibilities of technology and mobilizing for the climate crisis and exploring space and all of this is an indictment of the system. So our imaginations got outsourced to Elon Musk, and Elon Musk was willing to at least put those ambitious things on the table. And then that number two, hey, look, this guy is exploitive. He's delusional. He exemplifies the worst of Silicon Valley predator capitalism. But there's this, like, at least he's making things talking point, which I guess maybe my inner Luddite is very much like, so, right? Like, you're going to have to do better than just making things to me. Like, I want to know what you're making and why. And especially, actually, if you're claiming that what you're making is actually solving some of the biggest problems we face in the world. But those were two of the sort of defenses that I heard of Musk. And I think that, it's Musk as a personality, but those are still some of the kind of hold-up defenses of really the whole mythology of Silicon Valley as a whole.
Well, I guess I would say, based on your summary, I didn't hear the call, but there's maybe something to the first point, and the second point, I just don't get it. That just sounds like,
right.
That just sounds like reactionary sort of put up or shut up sort of point, and it's not very persuasive. The first point, I mean, remember Obama came in, and one of his first major initiatives with the stimulus plan was a green jobs program.
Right.
And I did some reporting on that at the time, and it was quite a failure for a lot of complex reasons. But I say if there was one main reason, it was a over-reliance on the private sector to solve problems, and that reflected, I think, a basic misunderstanding of how innovation happens and how massive infrastructure changes, which is what we're talking about if we're talking about replacing the fossil fuel car fleet, happen. And they don't happen when you just let the private sector handle it.
Right.
Obama's green job strategy was basically give a bunch of money to the states to come up with grants to give to private companies, right? And actually, Musk benefited quite a bit from those incentives. And what have we got to show for it? I mean, one of the things you forfeit when you rely on the private sector to come up with new technological advances is any kind of planning on what would be, the smartest policy overall. Right. I mean, who says it would be electric cars? I mean, what happened to public transportation?
Right.
Right. And I think that's where you see some of the sort of social and personal biases of the people in Silicon Valley revealed. I mean, they have by and large like a suburban mentality, upper middle class suburbanite mentality. They couldn't imagine taking public transportation, or why would you want that to be desirable?
Musk has literally said stuff like that. I mean, when he was first talking about Hyperloop, he was, he has these lines like, "Oh yeah, and who wants to be on a bus? That's weird," this type of stuff. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but not too much, right? Like,
no,
literally a dismissal of the most important things that we could do in terms of human mobility, development, and dealing with, not only the climate crisis, but also just sort of broader deforestation and the, catastrophe of suburban planning on ecology. And a major part of the talking point is just like, yeah, subways are weird.
So not only is there that bias, they're also going to, those kind of companies are also going to go for the most profitable solutions.
Right.
And those might not necessarily be the best if your goal is to try to, green the infrastructure and get us off of fossil fuels. My fear is that it's, it's too damn late. Like, it's not just California that's covered in smoke. I mean, Portland, where I am, yesterday had the second worst air quality in the world after Jakarta from all of the fires out west.
Right.
And climate change is here, right?
Right. It's happening. We don't need to wait for some imagined sort of Hollywood event. Like we're in it.
I kind of think like tycoons like Elon Musk had their turn, to show us what they could do with green energy, and the clock's still ticking. Like I think it's time for the public sector to step in and take over and do some real revolutionary innovation of the sort that happened in the 60s. And what's funny is people like Musk and even Peter Thiel will talk about that period of, the sort of American empire as the thing they want to bring back. I mean, Thiel, his talking point has always been, where's my flying car? Because he grew up in that period when all the
I
sci-fi
watched the Jetsons, and I want
Exactly.
to know where my flying car is, because even sometimes where I live, there are black people that walk around, and not just the ones that we import, whatever. I don't want to talk about it for certain kinds of parties, but just like walking, like they're just there. And I want my flying car. And until that happens, America's a failure.
How can you argue with that? Honestly.
You can't unless you want to be electrocuted. Sorry.
So they're not wrong in the sense that there was a time when the U.S. produced more innovative products and distributed those products more efficiently, and raised the general standard of living. And now the whole tech sector is focused on frivolities, but
that was because we had a social democracy with Keynesian investment.
Public investment, and it was guided by public priorities.
Right. So that is particularly delusional for any type of libertarian oligarch hucksters to romantically point to a time when the entirety of that innovation was built on a foundation of governance that they're working every day to undermine and destroy the last vestiges of. I mean, it's like beyond contradictory. It's sort of like, I'm going to train for the Olympics. My first step is I'm going to be sedentary this week and only eat Cheetos and Haagen-Dazs, because we don't train for the Olympics anymore.
There was a joke because Musk and Thiel used to be business partners at PayPal back in the first .com bubble. And they used to, I think Thiel has even written about this in one of his business books, but they used to have sort of a pop quiz about whether you were a Star Wars person or a Star Trek person. And I think...
Oh, my God. Jesus Christ. Just listen to the people that are running our world.
I'm serious. Yeah, no.
Oh,
but the main reason that I think they were both Star Wars people is because Star Trek depicted like some kind of socialist, future confederation, and Star Wars is more of a like anarchic, libertarian paradise.
Wait,
Star
Star
Trek?
Wars was libertarian?
In their minds, anyway.
Oh.
Star Trek is a Posadist show. My producer Andy actually wrote a great article about that for the New York Times.
I only know that Star Trek is socialist-y because of Peter Frase's Four Futures book. And he does an amazing breakdown, actually, of, yes, Star Trek really is a healthy example of a socialized society that's dedicated to human flourishing and exploration. It was actually fascinating to read.
I've actually only seen the first two original Star Wars movies, but wasn't George Lucas writing that about Vietnam too?
I mean, I was going to say, I've only seen... Isn't there is a sort of anti-imperial, pro-guerrilla message in Star Wars, right?
I think that carries through, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is these guys are too thick to even pick up on those themes and have a complete misreading of like even their most cherished sort of cultural totems.
They like to watch Mad Men and think it's awesome to
Luke Skywalker wanted innovation, and the Empire was a big government program which guaranteed equal opportunities for all. And the Luke Skywalker just was like, no, we're just going to like start businesses.
You know the Alec Baldwin scene in Glengarry, Glen Ross?
Yes.
My dad told me that he went to a meeting of a salesman, and they actually played that up on a big screen, and everyone was cheering.
You mean like this scene, which is a sort of like, this is the complete
motivational,
spiritual
actually.
hollowness of your lives. And they're just like, yeah, let's go sell some vacuum cleaners door to door.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really sad, man.
Well, that's like, every like Michael Lewis's Big Short.
Right.
That turned out he was horrified when he realized that people were reading that and deciding to go work on Wall Street. and same with like Wolf of Wall Street and all those kind of movies. I mean, you can't account for the audience, I guess. That's
true. So
yeah.
So all right. So let's.